just to explain a few things. Dominic Measures is our internal auditor, so when Dominic speaks, that's who he is. And then we have Jackson Murray and Steve Johnson from Grant Thornton. Steve has been with us many times before, but this is the first time that Jackson Murray has been with us. Jackson is the engagement lead from Grant Thornton, so he's replacing Geraldine, for those who knew Geraldine. So as we go on, it's the basic procedures that we usually adopt during council meetings. So if anybody has a comment, a question, then make that known and actually in the comments section, and hopefully I will see that one. But if we actually get started then, so first of all, welcome to our West Devon Audit Committee meeting for the 23rd of June, and we'll start off with apologies for absence, if there are any, Kathy.
We have no apologies, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, which is declarations of interest. Members are invited to declare any personal or disclosable pecuniary interests, including the nature and extent of such interest they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. Do we have any declarations? No. Okay. Moving on to item number 3, which is items requiring urgent attention. We have none, so we can go straight on to the item number 4, which is confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of January 2020, which is some time ago now, actually. Is everyone happy that we accept those minutes?
Yeah, happy.
Yeah. Yes.
I should be easier if I said, is anybody not happy, shouldn't I? Okay, then those are accepted, and we move on. So we now go to item number 5, which is the Grant Thornton Audit Progress Report and Sector Update for the year ending the 31st of March 2020. So I'll hand over to Jackson or to Steve.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is Jackson. I'll take this item, and thanks very much for the introduction and the virtual welcome to you all. So look forward to hopefully meeting you at some point soon in the future. In terms of the report that's on the agenda today, this is our normal update report that would come to all normal audit committee meetings, sets out progress and also some sector updates for members' attention. I think it's important to say this was originally to be tabled in the March committee, which was cancelled for obvious reasons due to COVID. I was going to pick out a couple of key changes to the audit and accounting timetable as a direct result of COVID. So they're set out on page 4 of our report. So previously, the national deadline was financial statements by the end of May to be produced by the council, and audit to be conducted where possible by the end of July, and financial statements to be republished by the end of July. Due to COVID, legislation has been laid. That means the council now has until the end of August at the latest to publish its draft financial statements. I think it's important to say we've been in constant dialogue with Lisa and team, and actually we're expecting those financial statements imminently. So they've done a great job in terms of producing those financial statements. The audit timetable has now moved to the end of November. So that's the key change really to the financial statements reporting timetable for 2019-20 as a direct result of COVID, just to bring that to members' attention. The reason we refer to progress at February is because of COVID, we've not really done any additional audit work, so this was the original report to be presented to members at that March committee. The other document would have been our audit plan, and we understand that was taken to full council instead of audit committee, so that's been presented to full council again because of COVID. That was taken off the audit committee's agenda, but also happy to take any comments or questions on that either at this meeting or virtually if members did have any comments or questions on that. And then the final point on page 5 is just to say within that audit plan we set out our audit fees or proposed audit fees for 2019-20. I'm conscious members wouldn't have had an opportunity to maybe have a discussion or comment on that if they wished to. So within our audit report we set out the proposed fee which we've discussed and agreed with Lisa, and since the publication of this report those fees have also been considered and approved by PSAA, who are the central contracting body that the councils use to procure their external audit services. So those have been moderated and agreed by PSAA for the 2019-20 fees as well. I won't say much more. The rest of our update sets out some of the wider context, so some of the national reporting, some of the changes such as the National Audit Office Code of Audit Practice, which will come in from 2021, which will change some of the audit work that we do, and again some further information from the Financial Reporting Council. I'll pause there and take any questions if there are any.
Sorry, didn't have my microphone on. Do we have any questions? Councillor Ridges is asking, has this committee seen the audit fee proposal?
The audit fee proposal was part of the audit plan, which went to the council meeting at the end of April. But I have got a copy of that here. So the proposed audit fee for 2019-20 is 36,535. And the previous year's fee was 34,835. So it has gone up slightly.
Okay.
Add a bit more context there, I suppose. So I think as a committee, you probably had conversations with Steve and Geraldine last year around some of the increased work that's being expected of auditors around the country, not just public sector auditors. So the proposed change in fee is a direct result of that additional work, specifically around PPE, so land and building valuations. PPE kind of takes a bit of a different meaning there, doesn't it, in terms of COVID? So land and building valuations, pension valuations, and some of the increased challenge and scepticism that the FRC are requesting of all auditors as a result of some of the national issues that you might have seen, Nottingham, Northampton, Carillion, etc. So the proposed fee, as I said, is subject to moderation and agreement by public sector auditor appointments. They've confirmed that in their view, that fee is appropriate, and that fee increase isn't specific to the council. That's an increase that we've sought and agreed across the board in terms of local government organisations.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, actually, quite a few of the things that we would have normally discussed at audit did actually go to full council. Jackson, there was one question I had, and I'm not too sure whether you can answer it at all. In the Bryden review, it did refer to the creation of a new corporate auditing profession. Do you know anything about that, or can you explain that further?
So I'm just skipping to that on the page. So, sorry, just finding that. Which element was it? Sorry, the creation of a corporate auditing profession governed by principles.
That's the one.
Yeah. So the Bryden review was not specifically public sector focused. This was wider audit profession as a whole. So the recommendations have been set out. My understanding of this is there's a number of recommendations. The corporate auditing profession, one of the recommendations was around potentially joint audits. My understanding is that may be what that is referring to. I'm more than happy to speak to colleagues. So colleagues have been directly involved in the Bryden review and providing evidence as a result and representations in respect of that. So I'm more than happy to take that away and circulate some additional information, either outside of committee or bring that to next committee if that would be helpful.
Well, it's not necessary really. I was just wondering what it was, because I thought really the auditing profession was fairly well set out as it is, you know. I just thought coming up with another profession that was a bit more complicated.
No, agreed. I think a lot of this was looking at potentially creating more audit firms who can audit, so creating more competition.
Oh, I see. Right.
So you'll often hear referral to the Big Four and the fact that they audit the vast majority of large FTSE companies. So it's looking at how is there more competition and challenge within that market.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Renders.
So bear with me, hang on. No, you're not going to see me. It won't let me do the video. I tried to do. Oh, here, hang on. Well, my question, I don't know if it's out of sync slightly, is that there's a lot of recommendations in the report that said improvements required. My question is, given the fact that we are, or the council's now working at a distance and remotely, does the report need to be changed to reflect this? Because I'm assuming that a lot of the stuff that would have happened to make things better can't happen because there's nobody there physically to make it happen. Or is it just me worrying about nothing?
Are you actually referring to the internal audit report, which comes on the next item on the agenda?
Oh, hang on, I might have clicked too far, Mike. Hang on a second. I was trying to do it on one screen. Hang on. Yes, take that back. It is.
All right, thank you.
Shut up for a minute. I'll hang on to that question. Apologies, guys. I saw that it was all under one thing, so yes. I'll take that back.
I suppose the only other point I'd make is, and linked to that question in a way, obviously this is going to be the first time potentially that we're going to need to do a fully remote audit. So again, we've been liaising with Lisa and the team to understand what are the implications and what are the practicalities of us undertaking an audit when we're unlikely to be able to attend the council's premises. We're just coming to the end of our NHS audits, which have all been completed remotely through use of technology, so Skype, Teams, etc. So again, we can update committee at the next meeting in terms of progress against this, but safe to say we're liaising between ourselves and finance to ensure that that is going to be possible and it's as smooth and slick a process as it can be in the circumstances.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? In that case, we just have to note the audit progress report. So thank you, Jackson, for that. Is everyone happy that we note that?
Noted.
Noted.
Yeah, noted.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the internal audit annual report, which Councillor Edmonds is going to introduce and then hand over to Dominic Measures.
Thank you, Chair. As part of the internal audit reporting process, Audit Committee has been receiving regular updates on the progress made on last year's audit plan. Under the public sector internal audit standards, the head of internal audit is required to present an annual report that provides an opinion that can be used by the Council to inform its annual governance statement. Today's report is that annual report, which summarises the work carried out by internal audit during 2019-20, reviews the performance of the internal audit service and provides an audit opinion on the adequacy of internal control. Overall, and based on work performed during 2019-20, internal audit is able to provide substantial assurance on the adequacy and effectiveness of the authority's internal control environment. And with your permission, Chair, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Measures to talk you through the report in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominic.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Yeah, the report in front of you, apologies for the length of it. It's a bit like, as Jackson said, with external audit, elements of this report would have been presented as part of the progress report that you would have received in March. That progress report actually never got tabled. And similarly, our audit plan for this year went to full council for approval in April, that you would have seen in the March committee. So the length of this report, as I say, is a little bit longer than normal, but it follows the normal format and sets out the work that we've done. If we look at, say, page 20, I'm not going to go through it in too much detail. If you look at page 20, there we start with what we call our key findings of some of the work that we've done throughout the year, mainly looking at audits that came up with an opinion of fundamental weakness or improvements required. I'm pleased to say that this year we did not come up with any fundamental systems with fundamental weaknesses, but a number of them did have improvements required. As you see, the first item listed there, business continuity, which for some time has been a fundamental weakness, actually we were able to do, as a result of a follow-up report, was able to increase our opinion and amend it to improvements required. Obviously, as the name suggests, there are still improvements that are needed, but essentially the travel of direction is in a positive direction. I'm not going to go through any of the other findings. I'll answer questions if there are any. If we then move down to page 28, we then have the usual table that you would see is the part of the normal progress report, which I've just updated to reflect the ticks, reflect the change in status since the turn of the year, since the 1st of January. Normally that would have been since the last progress report in around March time. So quite a lot has changed. So you'll see quite a few ticks there. There is one piece of work due to COVID that we're still working on, and that is the debtors income collection. Matt, one of my auditors, is still working on that, and we hope to get that all finalised and a draft report out as soon as possible. Moving then through Appendix A and down into Appendix B, which starts on page 36. This is where it's a bit lengthy because this outlines all the findings, the major findings of final reports that we've issued since the last progress report. So therefore, this is all the final reports that we've issued since 2020. Again, I'm not going to go through any of these in great detail, and we'll just answer any questions that there may be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have a few questions actually, but I think we'll go through the others first of all to see they get asked by somebody else. Councillor Renders was first because he'd asked the question on the previous agenda item, so we'll start off with Councillor Renders.
Sorry about that. I'd paged up and it all seemed to merge into one, and
that's fine.
I'd made a note on that bit and thought, well, I'll stick it there. No, my question was, given the current COVID situation and the fact that we are working more and more remotely, a lot of the comments on there, did they need to be revised? And also another question I got, which you just touched on there, was again, given the situation again from an audit point of view regarding debtors, we must have horrendous debtor problems at the moment, and does that need to be reflected in that report? Bear in mind that we're aware of it, or does it, because it's historic, have a line drawn under it at the original date? If that makes sense.
Yeah, essentially, Councillor, this report looks back at 1920, as you had to say, is historic. Obviously, COVID only kind of affected us in the last month or so. So therefore, our future work will reflect, obviously, the impact of COVID. And again, a bit like your external Jackson, as external auditors have said, we are looking at new ways of working remotely. There is also a proposal put forward where we'll do some what they call assurance mapping, where we'll look at your all your key systems, and from our experience and from talking to your officers, we can come up with an opinion without really digging deep into the systems and doing some rigorous testing. We all use technology. We've done that. Devon Audit Partnership have been doing that with other areas and other clients, such as our school auditors have been doing school audits remotely, i.e. we have not been going, normally they would go on site and talk to administrators, etc., and head teachers. But what we've been doing is actually doing it remotely, beginning with a list of documents that we need to see that they can send through electronically, followed up by a round of Teams or Skype calls, and where we can talk to the relevant officers straight away. One of the things with the ongoing plan, and I'm going to pick up with the senior leadership team, is to go through the 2021 plan and identify those audits where we can actually carry out the work without too much disruption to officers. Those that perhaps can be delayed slightly, those that should be deferred, and those that in areas that are quite critical to, I was going to say, the response plan, but we're now moving into new phases. But we'll also be looking at some of the new systems that have had to be introduced. Obviously, Lisa and officers have been heavily involved in getting grant payments out of businesses, discretion payments, etc. My two auditors, Matt and Julie, have been working with officers to help in that process. But as the part of the setting up of that process, we actually were given the process to look at to make sure it was as robust as possible, given the information we knew at the time. What Devon Audit Partnership is supposed to do is a certain amount of what we call post-event assurance. So we'll do what we basically call a basic audit of the new processes that have come in, such as the payments to businesses and people, and carry out audits, and we're hopefully going to do that during the summer. So I hope that answers part of your question.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, it's Councillor Vachon next.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. Dominic, my question really relates to the Concerto asset management software, which is mentioned as needs improvement. And I noticed that obviously we have issues with that, and it's unclear whether they're technical or lack of understanding. But obviously that may be an important part of our programme for the post-COVID and looking after our assets in the future. I'm just wondering if there's any measures in place to look at that currently, or are we looking at other systems?
Other officers may be able to answer this one. From my point of view, we knew we were coming up against a bit of a buffer with the software. We understand that there has been some progress with the software supplier to improve, especially around, it was one of the issues with management reports and so forth. And we know that there has been a certain amount of progress. How much more progress can be done is to be seen, I think. And hopefully, if there is certain amendments made, then we can improve our audit opinion. I kind of turn that one over to any officers out there who may know a little bit more than I do.
Thanks, Dominic. I am aware that we do have a couple of technical issues with the Concerto software, which we are looking to address at the moment.
I mean, one of the questions that I had was on the same subject, actually, and it speaks about the potential to create efficiencies and improvements in proceedings. Those are procedures, I can't remember. And one of them was actually the planned maintenance programme. So from my understanding from previous meetings of different committees and of the full council, that we did actually have a planned maintenance programme. Is that not the case? Can anyone answer that?
I can answer that, Chair, if that's helpful. Yes, we do have a planned maintenance programme. I think it's dovetailing that programme with the reports coming out of Concerto, which is the work we still need to do, because Concerto is a fairly new system for us.
Thank you. Okay, move on to Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, all. Actually, my question was answered in the response to Councillor Renders, so I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Straight on to Councillor Yelland.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, my question relates to on page 21 under the health and safety, which talks about improvements required. Quite a lot of that element seems to include perhaps identified issues in South Hams, and I just wondered really if that would have any implication in the sense, because this is a West Devon Borough Council report rather than a South Hams one, if that would have made any difference. We're looking at mainly to do with, as you've already referred to, building maintenance, but referring to Dartmouth Lower Ferry and Salcombe Harbour, and also at the last paragraph also talking about higher risk functions with environmental services, but Dartmouth Lower Ferry and Salcombe Harbour. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just point out that that's elements of, because it's a combined audit plan, we were reporting some elements of South Hams issues in this report. The impact, debatable what the impact would be, but I would guess that for West Devon there shouldn't be that much of an impact. Around environmental services, it is mainly a South Hams issue. I don't know whether anybody else can answer.
Chairman, Drew Powell here. Can I just qualify what the question is? Is it whether or not that would impact on the audit report, or is it that the only concerns regarding health and safety are just at South Hams?
A bit of both, really. It's yes, it's the impact on the report in the sense that obviously from the West Devon element, but yeah, taking into account obviously it is a joint report. But yes, so it's a bit of both, really.
If I can, Chair, I think obviously I defer to Dominic in terms of his view with regard to the audit opinion. I think with regard to health and safety, I think the key issue at the moment is we've made very good progress. The new arrangements under the senior management team, so health and safety now sits under me, and we've also got Ian Luscombe who's leading on that work. So there's some work we need to do to embed the good work in terms of the overall health and safety approach. We need to embed it really through the organisation and have the audit to show that all the risk assessments we've undertaken are actually being implemented on a day-to-day basis. So there is some work to do, but I think we've made very good progress. But I'll defer to Dominic in terms of the audit opinion. Yeah,
I agree. I agree with that. That there has been we've looked at health and safety now for a number of years, doing just the follow-ups of all the recommendations that were made about 2-3 years ago, and there has been significant progress. And this report does highlight the kind of the high risk areas, which a lot of them are within the South Hams area rather than yourselves. So as far as certain areas concerned, I would say the opinion could be better, so it could be of a good standard for West Devon. It's a question of getting all those kind of cross-cutting higher level elements in place. But as far as specific services, you obviously haven't got some of those higher risk areas that perhaps are dragging that opinion down to improvements required.
Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the questions I did have, which has been answered, is actually who is ultimately responsible now for the health and safety. So Drew's put his hand up for that one, so that's quite good. But we did have a few points concerning awareness issues of health and safety. Updates on lone working training. I know as councillors we came into the council offices and had some training on lone working and watched the video, etc. And I was talking about delivering health and safety training to senior leadership and first aid training. So Drew, is there a programme to implement all of that?
Yes, Chair, there is. I mean, there's an extensive programme in terms of moving us forward on this agenda. As you say, a lot of good work's been done. It is about embedding all of the principles and also having the systems in place to show that it's happening. So all the services have undertaken risk assessments, and going back to the point about the high risk activities, that's fair to say most of those are at South Hams, but lone working, dynamic risk assessments of people doing water supply testing, localities, that's all been done. It's just proving that actually we're implementing those on a daily basis is the next challenge.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richards.
Yes, welcome. I'm new to this committee, so excuse probably some of the questions I ask. This is the first time I've been on it. There's a table, provision of internal audit and performance 1920, which is because I printed it out. I haven't got. It's about 5 pages. 5-6 pages in. Actually, after the review section of each one, I don't know if you're there. Anyway, a couple of points is it makes actual audit days as a percentage of planned. Is it possible in a few areas to see the actual figure so we know we're getting what we're getting a percentage against? Like draft reports issues within target days. If it is possible to give us the number of target days so we know what so we know what 85% of or 90% of the target is when we deliver 85, and the same with levels of sickness as well. I mean, the figures are all pretty good actually, but it would just help understanding of the report.
Yeah, I can provide those figures. As far as the sickness is concerned, I put 3 asterisks there, and so further under it says sickness relating to officers within the team equates to 6 days in the period from the 1st of April through to 19th through to the 31st of March, which is an improvement. We have had higher levels of sickness due to various accidents and so forth, but this year it was just 6 days. I think Matt caught a bit of flu before the virus came along, so that's the reason for the 6 days.
No, they're good. It's just good in future reports to see the actual numbers, so we can see what the percentages relate to. That's great.
The overall target of the percentage of audit plan completed, the number of where it says days, our plan at the moment is 430 days.
Perfect.
So percentage of that.
That's good. If we see the number of days in these reports, then we know what the percentage of the days is, which is great. Thank you. Just going on future reports. Yes, just echoing Councillor Vashron's point regarding the software. Oh crumbs! I've lost such a big report. The software for excuse me, regarding tenancy management. That was just a bit of a key concern, obviously. And there was a couple of other points. I think it's just comments probably really as well as points. It's especially when it comes to council tax collection and also business rates, that being on top of it at the moment is absolutely key, because we won't be because there'll be many individuals or businesses debt defaulting at many different levels, and if we're not in there with the management plan very early, we're way down the line. And that's a bit of a particular concern. And the other concern, and the other point is I just wanted to raise is regarding the, for example, it's Sherford, not in the West Devon area, for example, or new business development. Is there anything we can do with planning that forces the developer, as a condition in their planning approval, that if they don't inform us when new properties come on or are sold, that we can enforce a penalty? It's a big ask, but it's just a thought I had last night going through, to ensure that somebody else has responsibility rather than us for identifying where council tax should be collected. Thank you.
Anyone else? Lisa? Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to answer some of those questions, Chairman, if that's helpful. With regard to the last point about Sherford, I do know that a member of the business rate team is in constant dialogue with the builders and the construction of Sherford, and that's how we're getting our management information around the properties that need to go on to be rated for council tax purposes. So that dialogue is very much happening. With regards to business rates and council tax, yes, you're absolutely right. We need to be monitoring that on a monthly basis. We reported our collection figures to members. That'll be on the Hub Committee agenda for next week, around our collection rates for business rates and council tax income for the first month for April. And in the next monthly budget monitoring report, we will be able to monitor the position and report to members the position for April and May. With regards to we have also got reminders going out for business rates and council tax this week, along with all of the other Devon authorities. So we will be sending out reminders. And with regards to rents, again, our sundry debt reminders, we will be sending reminder letters out, if not next week, the week after, for that. What we need to do is, as you say, monitor this every single month and report that position to members. In the past, we've done budget monitoring on a quarterly basis, and that won't be sufficient in this environment, this financial environment. We will be doing that on a monthly basis to members, so members will get actual figures around council tax and business rates, but that will be on the agenda for the Hub Committee next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
I did have a question, Dominic, concerning the insurance cover, because I think the insurance cover was noted as being sort of adequate, but then we should consider an external advice. Is that sort of a standard procedure with other councils?
Where I think we've had this question before, I think, Lisa, haven't we, about the external advice. It's something that it's considered by a number of authorities to be of use, so that you're given, it depends on your expertise, but it's always useful to have a second opinion and some advice on insurance front. So that's why we put that bit in. It's also, I think, talks about the way that we do insurance. It's almost like self-insure or go outside of the normal kind of corporate insurance companies and look elsewhere at different ways of insuring.
Fine, thank you. So that's something maybe, Lisa, we can look at. Just
Lisa, I can probably come in there. Sorry, Neil Hawke. Just a quick one, Chair. Yeah, we've certainly started conversations with a range of people to look at alternative solutions, including the Local Government Association, who have set up an insurance mutual. So we're having conversations with them to consider future options for insurance. We have just extended our insurance contract for another 2 years, but that will give us time to explore other options and ensure we've got sufficient cover in place.
fine, thank you. And the last point, Dominic, that I had was concerning purchase cards. You state that the improvements are required. I'm not too sure I fully understand how we can improve that from what we're already doing. Can you shed some more light on that one?
Yeah, this one came up. Those members that may have attended the DAP training session at Buckfast last October, we had a presentation about the risks of purchasing cards. They're much more commonplace now because they seem to be quite efficient. It's having the controls over how they're used, because basically they're like a credit card, and so it's almost like, oh well, I'll just slap it on the credit card type thing, and it's just having controls over those. The councils, both yourselves and Southampton, are not alone in some of the issues that you face, and therefore we're just putting it out there as to the kind of controls you need, whether you put limits on, making sure that the right people are using the cards. We've come across instances where transactions aren't checked. There needs to be a second person, whether it's line manager or whoever, checking what transactions are going through on a card. And other things, like I've had experience where we've come across clients that they swap cards over. Somebody's come to the top of their limit and they go to a colleague and say, can I borrow your purchasing card because I need to urgently buy something? And it's getting just controls over that. There is, I think, the groundwork, the foundations are there. There just needs to be a little bit more control imposed in certain areas. But the council's not alone. A lot of councils face these issues with purchasing cards.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, I think that's an area we can look at anyway to try and get some improvement there.
Yes, Chairman, if I could come in on the back of that.
Yes, please.
Certainly this issue about purchase cards was raised, as Dominic says, at the Devon Audit Partnership training event. On the back of that event, I specifically asked if we could do an internal audit around purchase cards. I think in light of the results of that audit, I think we have significant work we need to do in this area. That work will now be undertaken in the finance specialist team. Previously, it was in support services case management. So we will have one of our accountancy leads looking at purchase cards and doing extra work on that, particularly around retention of receipts, and also making sure we reclaim all the VAT that we are able to on that expenditure as well. I think in some of those purchases, it's done so that we can achieve a good value for the product that we've purchased, and those are some of the circumstances in which a purchase card has been used, so that we can get a good rate or buy those products at a good value. But we just need to ensure that all of those documentations backing up that purchase are kept in one central file and one central record database. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. But do we have any other questions? No, well, we have the recommendations before us. I should actually ask, have we any items for debate? No.
Just a quick one. I'd also put, you picked up on it, Chair, and it was the purchase cards. And my question is, I couldn't get my head round, although Mrs. Buckwise covered a lot of my concerns. What were we actually purchasing on them? I didn't quite understand what they were. Are we talking about credit cards?
So the purchase cards sometimes are used to buy pieces of IT equipment, for example, online. So those are some of the circumstances that we're actually getting a very good value. We're able to take advantage of cheaper prices through doing that, but it's just making sure that all the documentation around that purchase is kept centrally, so that when we do have an audit of that expenditure, it's all kept in a central place rather than on an email exchange. So we just need to make sure that all the documentation around those purchases are kept in a central location.
Right, I couldn't understand why we hadn't got VAT receipts, that was all. But that explains it if it's on emails and individuals rather than a central purchasing. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Chairman, may I come in on the back of that one?
Yes, please, Councillor Ball.
Thank you. Mrs. Buckle, just for clarity, because I think what you just said to Councillor Renders is helpful, but how many people actually have these cards? Are they sort of heads of department or appointed people within each department? How many are there out there? It would be useful to know that, please.
Yeah, from memory, there's about 8 to 10, I think, of the purchase cards which we have. So, for example, one will be in IT, one's in environmental health. So again, if we have, for example, an out-of-hours call, which involves, for example, a member of the environmental health team needing to buy emergency projects, that's the instance in which a purchase card can be used if it's out of hours, and that's used by the out of hours team. For example, also the estates team will have a purchase card. So it is for business critical reasons that we've got purchase cards. But again, it's just holding that information within a central file when those transactions are happening out of hours. It is a small amount of expenditure which is going through the purchase cards, but we just need to make sure we've got those good internal controls in place so that, for example, we can recover the VAT on that expenditure. But those are the main departments that have a purchase card.
Thank you, Mrs. Buckle. That's really helpful. I mean, I was from the way we were sort of talking, I was thinking it was all 20 to 30. So I don't feel so anxious about it now. But yeah, I can see the sense of being, fastidious about it. Because as you say, if a trail is lost or something happens, that it could run away quite easily. But thank you. I'm reassured, though. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other questions or comments. Thank you, Dominic, for a very good explanation and answering the questions so well. Councillor Edmonds, are there any comments you'd like to make before we look at the recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. I've noted the discussion with interest and the points that have been raised, and may I perhaps suggest that I'll keep those points in mind and follow that through with Mrs. Buckle, Mr. Ward regarding the IT software, etc., just to make sure that I remain aware of those and possibly report back to you, Chair, with sort of progress, if you feel that would be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful. Thank you. Okay, well, we have the two recommendations on the report. Are we all happy that we accept the two recommendations?
Yeah,
Happy to accept.
Yeah.
Happy to accept, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy to accept.
Yeah, accept.
Okay, thank you. That's accepted. Moving on to the corporate item number 7, which is the corporate risk register. The leader of the council is going to introduce this.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. In front of you is the biannual update of the Strategic Risk and Opportunity Register. It is presented so that the committee can independently provide assurance to the Council on the effectiveness of the management of strategic risk and opportunity. The register is regularly considered and reviewed by the senior leadership team, and then the summarising monitoring reports are presented to that team and then to the Audit Committee every 6 months. Illustrating that this is a living document, you'll note that some risks, currently viewed as being less significant, have been transferred to sit with and be managed within operational teams. Should their risk score escalate, they'll revert back to this register and fall back under the control of the senior leadership team. New risks have been added relating to COVID-19 and the delivery of health and wellbeing services. The risk register is where the likelihood of and the potential impact of events is recorded and the proposed management and mitigating actions are summarised. It will change as circumstances and situations change. But in order to be effective, it needs to be lean, but also comprehensive and relevant. The highest identified risks currently are financial, and we're all aware that the medium-term financial strategy has been the subject of much work even pre-COVID. Operational failures resulting from the COVID-19 emergency and general service failures, and there is an emerging and at present unclear risk around support for our leisure centres. I'm happy to take any questions, and obviously that could include recommendations for any further action that this committee considers appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Neil Hawke, you are the author of the report. Anything to add?
No, I think Councillor Jory has given a good overview of the report. I think just to link to the previous item in terms of the audit reports, I mean, we have a number of audit reports, and those reports do inform our risk registers, certainly our operational risk registers, which is why, when going back to the health and safety discussion, certainly for West Devon, health and safety has now dropped below the threshold for featuring on the strategic risk register. However, it is on the operational risk register. So just to put some context around how we use those audit reports to inform our risk register, because I think that's important and an important link that members are aware of. But no, not a lot else to add at this point in time, Chair.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions? So we have the recommendation before us. Any items for debate?
I've asked a question. I don't know if it should have come up, actually.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor Ridges, sorry.
Yeah, and so is Councillor Renders, according to my system.
Okay, so we go with Councillor Renders first.
Yeah.
No, I asked my question. It wasn't to do with this bit.
I thought that.
Right.
So,
Okay. Anyway, I'm just going to ask my. What I was slightly surprised about, and what we've had coming through for us from council, is the leisure service offering. I thought that would be 5 and 5, and I just is adequate provision being made for that, or you know, are we has the level is it, yes, the full impact of this or the level of severity been underestimated? Considering, you know, I don't know when this, how very recent this report is, but I know that there is difficulties with this organisation.
So this is as at last week when we published the report. We published it at the last moment. But there is a scoring matrix as Appendix B, yes, which sets out the scoring. I mean, the financial loss, in terms of a 5 for financial loss and other categories, at this point in time, it's more significant than the current risk, but it will continue, and we review it on a weekly basis. So it may well be that one does escalate up. I don't know if Lisa wants to pick up in terms of the overall leisure provision. She's been involved in the more closer discussions than me.
Yes, certainly, Neil. Thank you. So obviously today is, or the 25th of June is when we're expecting a government announcement around the next phase of the recovery plan, and that should give some government guidance around the reopening of leisure centres. So currently the leisure provider is waiting to see that government guidance. We are working with them in partnership with them, and obviously talking through timetables around centres being able to reopen, and the planning for that. And obviously, once there has been that government guidance on that and the government decision, there will need to be a period of planning and training for the centres to reopen. So we aren't able to give any further information on that at the moment, but we are working in partnership with them on that. Also, we have got a Sport England grant, so we've got some lottery funding of just under £5,000 across both councils. So we are going to be looking at things like the impact to ensure the impact on the contract is minimised, and that the centres are in the best position to adapt and react to the future environment. So where the leisure provider is at the moment is obviously looking at their business plan going forward. Obviously, until the centres reopen, they don't know what sort of footfall they're going to get. They have been able to have some of those fitness sessions online, and people have signed up for that. So that is all work in progress at the moment, and in future reports that go to the Hub Committee on the budget monitoring position, we will be able to give further updates on that. There is an update on the report going to the Hub Committee on the 30th of June, and that is a part 2, Appendix E to the budget monitoring report.
Thank you, Lisa. That's helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Drury for comments.
Excuse me. Yes, if I can just add to that, and I fully appreciate the question, Councillor Ridgers, and your interest in this. It clearly is an area where there is potentially a significant financial risk, and also it's an important part of our health and well-being offer. One could be very pessimistic about this and other risks at the moment. I think my view would be slightly tempered by the way in which the leisure provider is approaching the issue and the conversations they're having with our officers. But also, I was in a meeting yesterday with the District Councils Network and Simon Clarke, Minister for Local Government, and Simon actually quoted yesterday, there's an increasing, I think, realisation of the role that local councils have played and continue to play, and also an awareness of our financial position, and that is also creeping through into the leisure sector as well. And Simon's quote yesterday was that no local authority should be making drastic decisions at the moment. There is a package that is coming, and that will be unravelled and displayed to us fairly soon. So I think there are potential risks. I think they remain to be fully identified, and in keeping with the nature of the document, it will remain fluid and under review, and if there is an increasing risk, I'm sure the report will reflect that in due course. But I fully appreciate the question.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there's no other questions or items for debate. We have the recommendation which is laid out on the agenda. We're all happy that we accept the recommendation?
Happy, Chairman?
Yeah, happy to accept.
Yes, yeah. Accept.
Good.
Sorry.
Thank you. So that brings us to the. Thank you, Councillor Jory, for the introducing that and following that through. So that takes us to the end of our agenda. So thank you very much. Wonderful to see that we've got 22 participants. I think that's the highest attendance we've had for many years in an audit meeting. I should like to say thank you to Lisa Buckle and Pauline Henstock for all their hard work and for the team's hard work during this very difficult time. So well done from all of us for that. Yeah. Obviously today we've been looking at the 1920, mostly been looking at the 2019-20 audit. Obviously the fun will happen next year when we're looking at the current year, 2021. So our next meeting will actually be looking at the accounts, so we'll have a lot bigger agenda for that one. But really, that brings me to the end. So thank you all for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair.